Hello everyone, my name is Jula Vanegas. Welcome to my talk. Today my talk will be about analyzing crosstalk between superimposed signals. This is a joint work with Benjamin Elsner, Axel Muck, and Daniel Rudolph. So first, I want to talk about the motivation behind this. So the motivation are in these ion channels experiments. Ion channels are proteins that allows ion to pass in the cell membrane. And these proteins can have a process that is called gating. So they can be open or they can be closed. If they are closed, they don't let any ion pass. And if they are open, they let ions pass. And these different protein conformations allow a different amount of ions to pass. But the problem is that cells usually have multiple ion channels. And these channels often are non-independent. So they have non-independent gating. And in the experiments that we make, we cannot recover completely when one channel is open or closed, but just a superposition or a superposition of all the signals of these proteins. So this will be our mathematical setting. So in our mathematical setting, we will have L emitters that are in our example, these ion channels. And these emitters are going to be denoted as X to the power of E, and are non-independent binary Markov chains. So this is very important that they are non-independent, so they can exhibit dependencies between them. And the transition matrix of this of the whole process of the multidimensional process will be called M. And then we have disaggregation, meaning that the signal, we can only see the superposition of the signals, meaning the sum. And on top of that, we have some randomness. So for example, here, the red line is a function of disaggregation, and the dots are disaggregation plus some Gaussian noise in this case. But as we see, we will be able to separate from more general noise types. So here, if we know that our aggregation is again a Markov chain, then we can use standard tools of hidden Markov models to recover from these dots disaggregation. And for this step, that is going to be the main gist of my talk. How can we say something about this matrix M given just the aggregation? If we know that this matrix comes from this VND multidimensional model that I will talk today, then we can actually recover something. We can recover the main information. So the problems that we have here is, of course, that from a path of the sum, it is generally not possible to recover the individual paths of the channels or of these emitters. And the process of the sum is not necessarily a Markov chain. But if this multidimensional matrix satisfies something that is called the lumping property, then the corresponding sum process is indeed a Markov chain. So what does the lumping property says? So if I choose two vectors that are in this space is basically that the number of ones of X and Y are exactly equal to I, then the probability of, if I know that in time K, I have this vector X, and I want to calculate the probability that in type K plus 1, the sum is equal to J, this probability is going to be the same independently of which vector I choose here. So independently of which vector of the space I have. So I only care basically of the number of ones that this vector has. If this property holds, then the sum is again a Markov chain. And in the first step that I show you, we can recover from the dots the aggregation by standard hidden Markov model tools. And for the second step, we created this vector norm dependent Markov chain model that means that this matrix can be parameterized by these two L parameters called lambda jot and nu jot. And these parameters basically says what is the probability of going from 0 to 0, or if you think about the ion channel example, from close to close. If I also know that in time K, the sum of the number of open channels or the sum of this X was exactly equal to J. So the number of ones in time K was exactly equal to J. If you see here, these parameters don't depend on the I. So we also assume that these Markov chains are more or less equal. So this probability doesn't depend on the I. And if we have this, then this multidimensional matrix can be parameterized as a multiplication of these parameters. So yeah, this new is the same, but just going from 1 to 1. If you want to learn more about this, I also recommend checking our paper in arXiv. In the main results of this paper, you will see that if we have that this matrix is from this VND Markov chain model, then the corresponding sum process is again a Markov chain, and we can retrieve completely this matrix. That includes, of course, the dependencies between the individual channels and the dynamics of the whole system from the matrix of the sum. Moreover, we can describe our model with two very intuitive properties because, of course, if you are talking to experimentalists, then this model may seem a little bit abstract. So these properties are, the first one is called permutation invariance. So if I have two vectors, two binary vectors, and I have a permutation matrix, the probability of going from one binary vector X to another binary vector Y is the same as if I apply a permutation matrix. So you can think about that as if I relabel the vector in the same way. So I relabel the two vectors in the same way, the probability stays the same. And the other property is called conditional independence. So conditional independence means that if I want to calculate the probability of going, let's imagine I can see the whole process. So the multidimensional process, if I saw in time k the process was in vector X, the probability of going from this X to this Y, I can treat that as independent in this way. So this will be the same as the probability of multiplying the probability of each channel of going from the whole process to this of the state J, Y. Here in this sense is just the I coordinate of this Y vector. So this means that if I know the whole process, I basically can treat this more or less as independent. That of course doesn't mean that the processes are independent in themselves, but it means that the overall effect is more like it's more like an overall effect than an immediate effect between the channels. So to give you an overview, we have this initial picture, and we wanted to go a little bit back. So first, if the multidimensional Markov chain is from the VND class, then we have that the aggregation is again a Markov chain. We can completely recover the dynamics of these emitters in the sense of this M of the multidimensional matrix M. From the matrix of the aggregation, we will never be able to recover exactly which emitter was in 0 and 1. But we can modify Van Velt's algorithm for this setting to estimate the multidimensional transition matrix M. So here, the Van Velt's algorithm is basically an expectation maximization algorithm. And in those steps, we can include the parameterization of the M to make this algorithm precise and make this algorithm recover this M matrix. And moreover, VND is equivalent to two very intuitive properties that are this permutation invariance, that is basically relabeling, and conditional independence, that is that if I will be able to see the whole vector in time k, then I can treat it in the next time as independent. So thank you so much. That was my presentation. Thank you so much for coming. I'm open to any questions. And also I would recommend, if you are interested in this topic, to read the paper. Thank you so much.